Hi, welcome to 2020 Tasty Treats with GourmetQuilter. We're back again. We're doing all these wonderful things this year, and at the moment we're working on some foundation piece blocks. So we're doing 20 different foundation piece blocks, which is simply that, sewing things onto a foundation. We're using paper as our foundation. We've already done 2 blocks. This is block 3, which is going to be a house, and it's done in 4 separate segments so that we can join those together afterwards. So if you've signed up with GourmetQuilter.com to receive the pattern, you'll have a pattern like this that you can print out, and then you can cut your segments apart. Just roughly cut them like I've done here. I've already done my pattern, so there's still a little bit sitting outside. Our final cutting line is going to be the dotted line, but I've already gone ahead and cut my segments apart. I've got my pieces of fabric ready. On this particular one, the roof red is a little bit larger, and the backgrounds, just to allow for the extra width of the roof. So I've got 4 segments here. So we've got the top one, which does all the chimneys and the little bit of sky behind, and then the next segment does the roof, so we've got some sloping seams there, and then a segment that does the front door and the window, and then the 2 windows on the side of the house. So I've actually already gone ahead and stitched the 2 windows on the side of the house, but I haven't trimmed it yet, so they're all looking a little untidy currently. But I thought I'd go ahead and just do the door and the windows. It's fairly straightforward. We're basically sewing the pieces up the center column, and then we put a piece on each side. So I just thought we'd do that because we need a door to get into our house. So I'm going to position my door piece on the back, and then we're going to put one of the next pieces on, which is part of the wall in between the door and the window. So we just need to make sure we're covering that seam quite nicely, and I can pretty much see, I can see through. It is light. So remember, we're using a slightly smaller stitch. I've got a 1.5 instead of a 2.5 is my standard stitch. And we do that because it helps perforate the paper and it holds it nice and firm when we pull at it to pull the paper away. And so we're going to stitch, we're going to trim, we're going to press. Now, when there are lots of little pressings like this, you might find that a little bit tedious to go to the iron. You may have a little finger presser or a little roller that might work for you. Personally, I just like the iron, so I will do that. So I've got a door, then I've got a bit of wall, then we've got a window coming up next. So it's just a matter, the pattern does tell you which pieces are which colour. So it's just a matter of positioning things so that when you sew them in, they're only little pieces. Quite good for using up some of your real scraps in your scrap basket, if you have such a thing. Stitch, fold, trim, and press. And then we've got another piece of wall on top of the window. Make sure you're keeping your fabrics right sides together so that they all come out the right way in the end. So when you're doing something as straightforward as this, it goes quite quickly and you don't have to do a huge amount of thinking because you know that you're just flipping over that amount and it's all kind of straight and what we're used to. It's when we do those little angled shapes that we have to think a little bit harder and make sure that we've got enough fabric, like on the roof that we'll be doing fairly shortly. So we've got their centre bit done, we've got our door and our wall, window, wall. So now we've just got walls either side. So we can pop these pieces on here. Should be able to see through enough to be able to position that so that you can stitch it. I've got plenty of width there, so it won't matter if my seam's a little bit on the large side. Remember to stitch out to the edge of your seam allowance when you do this sort of sewing. And because when I've stitched them I've gone beyond this line that I've just stitched, so that I've got seams still stitched in there. When I go to open this now to fold it back so I can trim, I just need to just pull away at those little stitching lines, and that paper will most likely just tear. It won't really matter because we don't need the paper in the long term. It's just there to help us get it right in the medium term. So now I'm just going to trim my seam off, and I can press that. Then I can put the other piece of wall on the other side, and we'll have a front and a side wall for our house. We won't yet have the roof. So it's just worth considering, as we've got a smaller stitch, you don't want to be making too many mistakes if you can help it, because unpicking smaller stitching is quite a lot harder than unpicking larger stitching. So I'm just going to press, I'm just going to trim and then press that, and then that whole front wall with our door is done except for the actual trimming. So it's going quite well, this little house. So that's going to be a whole lot wider than it needs to be, but so that I've got another segment ready for trimming. I might trim those up later. I might do the roof next, because it is those funny little seams that go on a funny little angle. So we're going to start off by positioning B1, which is the piece up here in the corner, which is a background piece. So I can position that one behind there, and then I'm going to position this sloping one here, which is my red roof, and this is the one I have to be careful of. So I'm just going to fold that. So sometimes it's easy to help fold by putting the ruler next to it and press that over, and that's so that when I've got this behind, and I can pin that if I want to hold it in place. And then we need to make sure that our roof is right sides together with it, and that it's going to go where we want it to go. So it's not, unless I turn it around that way, which just means that you just need to have it well and truly oversized, so that when you're stitching it, everything is included. And that's all looking pretty good now. Because I've folded it on that line, I've checked that where that roof is coming to is down here and up here. Can you see that there? So this line that comes along here is where we're trying to cover. So you could press that one also, so that you can make sure that when it's flipped, it's going to be in the right place. So now, without moving those two, I can stitch that line. Right out to beyond the seam allowance. And now I can flip that back on that fold line, that stitch line again, and I can trim off these corners that we didn't need. Just here. And I can press that, and we're going to see that that's going to be covering the area that we need it to cover for our actual roof. And now we need to put this triangle, this piece B3 on, and we've got the same thing going on here. So we might want to press that fold so that we can see where that one's going to go, right along that line there. And I'm just going to put that on a bit of an angle, and I'm just going to make sure that when that's stitched, so it's this triangle in here that we're trying to cover. I might want to press that line. Well, it's not going to do it because it's attached, but that's okay. I can press this, fold this over, and I can just make sure that there's going to be enough of this fabric behind everything, and there is. So this is good news. So I can stitch my line. So just keep an eye on those funny angles, And they're one of the main reasons we do this sort of foundation piecing, because it's hard to cut and piece some of these sort of shapes. So, but just by flipping that pattern over, usually you can get a good result doing it that way. And now I've just got my last piece, which is a corner, which is a background again, and I can position that, and I know this one will fit because it's plenty big enough. Behind there and there, I can see where my seam's going to go and stitch that in place, and we'll have a roof as well. And then the chimneys are going to be very similar to the door and window piece, but there's only one extra strip on instead of one each side. So we just want to fold that and trim it. Woohoo, this house is going to get a roof. And press that out there. All looks a little bit weird at the moment, but it's all going to come together pretty soon. So that's the roof segment. If we trim off those, you'll see that a little bit better. I'll trim along the dotted line now. And there is a roof. So you can see, you just got to watch those angled seams. So then there's the chimneys to do, which I'm going to just go ahead and do those, and I'll come back and show you the block at the end. The chimneys are really very straightforward, with a piece of background in the middle there, and then you're going to put on a piece of red for each chimney on each side, and then another background, and then there's a background strip. So very similar to the way we did the door, but instead of the second side you're only putting one strip on. So just going along like that, and that works really well. So I'll go ahead and do that and come back and show you the block nearer the end. So I've been quite industrious. I've made all my patches now, and I've trimmed them all so that we can see that they're all looking fairly respectable. I've done my chimneys. So now we just need to join our block segments together to make the block. So we're going to join the front door and the side wall together first, and then we can join that to the roof, and then we can add the chimneys on last. So I'll go ahead and join my pieces, and I can show you when the block is all done so you can see it finished. Okay, so I've joined my segments up, and I'm just making sure these seams are pressed. So when we joined together these two walls, remember before you join it to this next one to just pull these little bits from the seam allowance out of the way, so that that isn't extra bulk and fiddle to try and get the little bits of paper out of the corners later. Other than that, I think we're looking pretty good. We have our little house block done, so that's block 3 done. So that was those 4 segments, they all come together to look like that. So that's always just pretty exciting, I think. So we can put that there with our other blocks. So that's 3 blocks done already of our 20, so that's pretty exciting for the 20 foundation blocks. And don't forget to have a look on GourmetQuilter.com, otherwise I'll see you again for block 4.